I've got online. What a nightmare this has just been. Trying to mess about with all different rotations and things like that. So, everybody's wanting to know what the preservation industry's dirty secret is. What's your dirty secret? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the dirty secret is that some surveyors that are going to properties are not really qualified surveyors. And the surveyors that are going are not always experienced. They don't know all the latest systems. They only know one system that their company have told them to implement because the technicians or labourers or plasterers that they use to install the work only know one way of doing it. So I'll go from beginning. This is time of year when you've got different types of dampness affecting properties. And when I say different types of dampness, come a bit closer. That's it, a bit closer. When I say different types of properties, different types of dampness in different types of properties, what I mean is that not all damp is rising, like I said before. But a lot of so-called surveyors and surveyors go to properties and tell customers, vulnerable customers, that they've got rising damp and the wall plaster all needs hacking off up to 1.2 meters or a meter, and then a plastic membrane sticking on, and then plasterboard in, and then skimming, and a new DPC drilling and injecting. And it's a problem we've got in our industry that people don't want to talk about. I talk about it because I get sent all these surveyors, I get sent their surveys to me, and I have to read through them. And even though I've not been to that site, that particular property, I can tell by what they've put down that it's not right. So I'll give you a couple of for instances. If you've got in your report, when you read it, if you've got wrote down on one of the sections, if it says the property is suffering from rising damp and the damp-proof course has failed, that is a red flag, as far as I'm concerned. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, as a qualified damp surveyor and PCA member and experienced contractor that's been doing it probably too long to talk about. If that is comes up on your survey, that's a red flag. And the reason why it's a red flag is if a property has got a built-in physical damp course, which after probably 1919 they probably have, if your house was built after 1919, and a few that were built before, but if it has got a physical damp course in, the chances of that physical damp course failing all the way around at once are very slim. You can get bridging, so on outside, if it's been ground out and repointing, then these are where we are sort of that could bridge, and if it's got a cavity and cavity's blocked, it could go over into inside and above damp-proof course. but a good surveyor should be able to spot that. But a bitumen poured DPC is not just going to fully disintegrate all the way around the room, is it? And then rising damp, water from the ground is not going to track up and then wet all the wall through. It's usually when there's not one in place and there's a source of moisture in the ground. So water's got into the ground for some reason. Probably because drains, old clay drains, and they've either moved and cracked and water's going into the ground, or something's happened around that drain and there's water going into the ground from that drain, which provides a source of moisture. Or if it's on a hill, perched water table, and water's going down that way, your drainage is not correct all the way around your property, and water's seeping into the ground, and you've got like a void of water. So you've got a volume of water underneath that ground. And still, it'd only come up where it's cracked or bridged. So if on your survey it says that you've got rising damp all the way around, red flag. And there's a lot of surveyors still putting that in their surveys. And what they're not doing is identifying each type of damp and differentiating it from other bits of damp and telling you that that type of damp needs this system, this type of damp needs that system. For instance, if it's a bridging issue, then obviously you sort out what's bridging, and then you could put a number of systems on after you've sorted that out. If it's sulfate salts on a chimney breast, that needs an isolation system. And there's different types of isolation systems on the market. So the old school isolation system would be to hack all the plaster off. One thing you don't have to do these days, because modern products have evolved, and now you can put, if the plaster's sound, you can put an isolation system on the chimney breast. And I've done videos on here, fitting it. You also have to ventilate the chimney and make sure it's capped off properly, and other things which a surveyor had probably put in survey, or should do, but it's not happening, is it? So the other type of damp, especially this time of year, is a lack of adequate ventilation and condensation forming on external walls or cold spots or dead pockets of air inside your property. And what's happening is inexperienced surveyors working for big national companies, because they're sending them out too early and they're not being shadowed. But what I have seen is, and I've seen it from a few surveys that's been sent, inexperienced surveyors are going out on their own, they're doing a report, and then they're having to show it to somebody who's a bit older, and he's got to sort of pass it. When I'm saying a bit older, a bit more experienced, and he's got to pass that report, but he's not being on site, so he doesn't know what's actually happening. He's only going from photos and descriptions what this young experienced surveyor has put in place. Now everybody has to start somewhere. You can't go and learn how to be a surveyor and then set off and know everything. I get that. We've all had to start somewhere. I've had to start somewhere, and we all have to start somewhere, and you all have to make your mistakes. What I am doing, I'm just pointing these things out. You tend to get these big national companies, and what's happening is they've got a big turnover of staff because they've got to keep their overheads down. So when an experienced surveyor, he might get headhunted and go somewhere else. He might want to set his own practice up. That leaves a void, and you've got these young ones that's got to come through. And I think they're fetching them through a bit too fast. But it's not just, these big companies. Then you've got unqualified people who's never spent any money on their education, never done any relevant courses to upgrade the knowledge in this industry, they've not done out like that. But they've been shown how to do damp proofing, and they've set their own damp proofing company up. Again, we all have to start somewhere. But the difference is between proper professionals who want to better themselves and them that just want to make money is the former will spend money and invest in himself and go and learn this knowledge, which is new systems, new techniques, existing techniques, history of buildings, just all that kind of stuff. But they just want to go earn a wage and then that's it. Or earn more than a wage. And what it is, it's to the detriment to the customer. So the customers are suffering. What I've been doing is I've been looking at people's surveys. So all these surveyors that's doing, if you're working for a big company, you're doing 5 surveys a day or 4 surveys a day. They'll probably go out on site for 2 or 3 days, and then they'll spend a couple of days in office or on the computer writing them up, typing them up and putting quotes in. But that's a big workload. And there'll become a point where there's no personal touch to it. It's just repetitive, and it's just knocking surveys out time after time after time. And trying to remember everything, even though you've got stuff wrote down, trying to remember everything about that job kind of goes into a blur. And if it is just a job, if they are just working for a company, have they got that sort of, are they bothered whether it works or not? They put a system in place, hack it all off, just say it's all rising damp, hack it off, and then forget about it until it comes back to bite them, and then they have to revisit that survey and see whether whose fault it was the correct system has not been put in place. So this is what I'm finding. And when I'm reading through these surveys that get sent to me, because the concerns offer customers who have got little knowledge, but they can see something's wrong. You know what I mean? They've probably been online, because anybody can go on YouTube now and type in a specific word and have a look, what type of damp it is. And a lot of people are doing that because they've got concerns about surveys that's getting sent to them. Now, when I do get these sent through, especially from these bigger companies that obviously I'm not going to name, but the nationwide companies with like loads of people working for them. If you're lucky enough to live in and around Yorkshire and that kind of area, you can send their surveys to me. So if you get a survey, send it to me. I'll have a look at it. I'll guarantee that we can beat it by at least 10%, because we've not got as bigger overheads, but we'd have to look at whether it's been diagnosed correctly. And a lot of times, well, nearly all times, it's not been diagnosed correctly. They've missed stuff out. There's a couple of other companies that's around me, that's around near me, in other parts of Yorkshire, and we know that they're struggling because staff have left them. They've got a big workload. The staff's left them, and they've not got trained technicians, damp technicians, experienced technicians to carry out the work that they've surveyed, and their kind of work all over North of England. And I've had a few phone calls from people, customers, saying they've been let down. And they've been going a while, this company. Fingers crossed that they don't go bust. But they did have some bad selling practices, and quite a few complaints. And I've seen the surveys, and when you're writing things in red, saying, making out that it's urgent, and adding stuff on that are preventative measures rather than needs doing, which is a grey area, and a lot of surveyors are doing it, saying that timbers have got to be sprayed, then it's a concern. Bad selling practices. So I'll go to a survey and I'll diagnose what's needed, and we'll implement, or we'll say that this system needs put in place for that type of dam. This system needs put in place for that type of dam. And it's usually, instruction from PCA is to do it, to implement systems that cause less disruption to environment, that's the most ecologically viable. And I want to have less disruption. And because I've fetched all these different systems out, different companies, so your Safeguards, your Wickham-Alls, and I think that they're two companies that have been more pioneering regarding damp proofing work and preservation work, not so much waterproofing, but damp proofing and preservation work. They're only two companies that's fetched products out that's been innovative. So you've got Wickham-Alls Isotherm, fantastic product, probably going to be award-winning, especially for local authorities, housing associations, things like that, where you can fit it on a wall, and even untrained technicians or untrained tradesmen, plasterers, can be taught this method in a half a day. I think Wickham will go out and they'll show people how to do it. I went and I taught. Who did I teach how to do it? Waits. So I went to Waits's and showed their tradesmen how to fit this system, and they fit it in Barnsley Council's houses. Whether it gets diagnosed correctly by their surveyors, I don't know, but their tradesmen know how to fit it, and basically it's an adhesive, and you notch it. It's like a tile adhesive. You notch it, and then there's a 4mm membrane you fit on wall, and it can raise the temperature of that wall, which is normally a solid external wall, by around about 8 degrees, which really helps along with ventilation and stuff like that if it's surveyed properly. So that's a product that they've fetched out, and on back of that, I think Bostik bought them out. So owner of Wickham-All, probably on a beach somewhere, watching this video. Yeah. So Safeguard. I mean, how many products have they fetched to market that everybody uses and have been copied? Probably biggest innovation, dry zone cream, damp check rods, and then you've got express damp proofing system, which I've promoted, quickest, cleanest system on market that's not been adopted by a lot of dinosaurs in our industry, because they don't trust their technicians, tradesmen, to fit it properly. And that's the only reason. They're still using either sand and cement or solid plaster for walls, which is all right if you've been instructed to have solid plaster by homeowner, because they want to put fixings in or something. But express damp proofing system, brilliant. Dry base. dry base liquid DPM. What a product. So versatile. Every preservation company should have some in stock, ready to use. Dry grip. Another versatile product, used to express damp proofing system. So versatile as a glue, as a waterproof glue. Dry flex, which is a system that was fetched from Germany, which they used in wet rooms and things like that. And the membrane, Mappy have got a system, a waterproof system for wet rooms, and it's the membrane that we use, which is a blue, thinnest membrane you can get. We use it as an isolating system and waterproofing to some degree. That is just a brilliant system. So this is the issue that we've got. Surveyors working for companies, it's just a job. Whereas you've got your independent surveyors, which people think because it says independent, that they're not tied to any companies or out like that. So they can give an unbiased survey. But what they can't do, according to PCA, is put costings in. For simple reason is they don't know costings because they've not got a company. So if they do, if it is an independent surveyor that's done your survey and they have put it's going to cost this much or around this much, or even give a ballpark figure, it's wrong and it shouldn't be done, and it's false and it's fraud because they don't know a company's costs. And every company have got different costs because they've all got different overheads. And I bang on about this before, and I bang on about it a lot. So so I'm not saying don't use an independent, but if you're using them for a pre-purchase survey, you're buying an house, and that has to go into a bank, that survey has to go into a bank, and bank look at them prices, and if they're using them prices for a retainer, saying it's got to have this damp proofing work, and independent says it's going to be between $3,000 and $3,500 or whatever for work, and they put a retainer on for customer, and then they go to a contractor, and contractor says, oh, it's going to be $5,000. There's going to be two things going off there. Your customer's thinking they're getting ripped off by a damp company, which is not the case. They're just telling you their prices and their costings, and that's what it costs for them to do that work. But they're comparing it with what the independent has put down, and this is why they shouldn't be putting it down. So, independents, if you're putting prices in, no, in your bed, dirty boys. You shouldn't be fucking doing it. Simple as. And if you carry on doing it, are there going to be any consequences? No, because the company that they've all got the qualifications with don't seem bothered about it. Do you know what I mean? They've got that rule, but don't seem to want to implement it. Anyway, I'm just letting people know that is one of the issues. So I'm not saying don't use independents, but just be aware that pricing is not going to be it's not going to be set in stone. And if it's more expensive, don't think that the contractors' prices is wrong. It's the independents' prices that's wrong because they're just guessing. It's just guesswork. So that's one of the issues. That's one of the issues. Now, other issue. So I'll come away from qualified professionals who've invested in the money and they've got they're experienced and they've serve the time and they're doing all right, but they're still getting surveys wrong. On to these other people that customers think that because you've got a damp company and they say they're going to send a surveyor out, they think that I think they'll assume that they're qualified surveyors, and they're not. They're either people that just own a company, they've got a bit of knowledge, they know a couple of systems, and they're going out and they're just saying, yeah, you've got rising damp and stuff like that. And these surveys that I get sent, this is some issues that I see. And I've done a few videos about it. So there was a guy in Blackpool, he did I did a reaction video. A guy in Blackpool got his own damp proofing company, stood on site with an investor, and the investor thought it'd be brilliant to fetch this guy in and talk about all these damp issues that he'd got. As a damp proofing expert, he called him, and we just picked it to bits because he just made his son look daft. Put it all on camera, and if have a look back, it probably says Blackpool Damp or something like that. But I feel for investor who made this video, because it kind of made his credibility a bit, because it were his house that he were laying, mess about with. Yeah, so have a look at that. So, and each type of person that you're going to be getting at your house throughout England, they come across as knowledgeable because they can talk. They've done it, apparently I think he might have been a plasterer and done a bit of damp proofing work. And I'm not saying his work would have been bad, but it was just all misdiagnosis, and it was just, you could tell there are lots of stuff where he were kind of making up as he were going along. Now I don't know whether they have any complaints, but I've seen it firsthand around here. So we've been to lots of jobs, and when I've looked at what they've wrote down as opposed to what's been done, it leaves a lot to be desired. So that's your other issue that you've got. If you think that you're going to get someone who's a qualified surveyor, what I'd do is ask them if they've got any relevant qualifications, that's all. And again, everybody's got to start somewhere, but if it's at the detriment of your customer, then I think that's going to be an issue, and especially if you're around here and I get sent your survey. So if you've had a survey done, if you're buying an house, you've had a survey done, you've got loads of work to do, get in touch. I've put my number and email address in these comments. You can send it through to me. I'll have a look at it and I'll tell you what's what. So again, we can beat big companies, nationwide companies, by a minimum of 10% straight away, because we've not got as big an overheads as them. But I'd have to have a look at the survey, and I'd have to see whether I think that their surveyor has diagnosed it properly, which I've had quite a few where they've not, and we've had to go out and do another survey and tell them exactly what's needed. Can't talk about which companies they are, because they get arse on and start crying and grassing us up to our member company, saying, they've been talking about me. But my main concern is for customers, and it always have been. We're not a B2B business. We deal with residential customers only. So our invoice goes to customer, we get paid off a customer. There's no third parties. I don't work for builders. I can't think of worse, to tell you the truth, working for a builder. But these companies do. They have got some good surveyors. I know they have. But what's happening is they're using, like I said, they're using people that's just been qualified, and they're sending them out to site to diagnose problems, and there's nobody shadowing them and stuff like that. So, and listen, we've all got to start somewhere, haven't we? We've all got to start somewhere. On another note, what we've noticed as well is a lot of dinosaurs that's been working for PCA, they've all grown a pair of bollocks now, and they've all started doing videos. So I always said that there would be contractors and surveyors that would end up doing it, and they'd be better than me. Sort of 10 years ago when I first started, more than 10 years ago when I first started. So now we've got people on Facebook, Instagram, not so much YouTube. I don't think we've got many on YouTube. Although PCA has got a YouTube channel. I think they started it last year or year before. Started putting like 1 or 2 videos on, but now they upload all their webinars on there. Again, fucking dinosaurs, but they're getting there. They're getting there. Way behind. They should have been doing it years ago when we told them. Now they're promoting podcasts. Now mine stopped. Never promoted my fucker though, but probably because I swore too much. But yeah, so in newsletter now promoting these boffins podcasts where they talk about damp. I mean, who the fuck would do a podcast talking about damp, eh? No idea. Anyway, so they're gradually coming into 20th century and using social media. They actually promoted AI tools, 2 years after the Chat GPT came out. When we were using it, when it first came out, we were using it for all sorts. And now they're saying to all dinosaur members in newsletter, oh, you need to be using AI. Oh, and look, we use this to write all this, which were obvious anyway, you know what I mean? But for dinosaurs, then it probably weren't. So I think that's about it. I'm hoping that I've given you some value. Again, if you've had a survey done by any companies, send it through to us to have a look. If you're not sure, if you're not 100%, send it through to us. We can beat most big companies by around about 10%, so you're saving 10% straight away. And yeah, let's have a look. And you never know, we could end up doing your job. And that's if you're in and around Yorkshire. If you're in other parts of the country, sorry, you're going to have to do it. Oh, that's another thing. When people say you've got to do your due diligence, I feel sorry for customers and people that live in big cities and towns, or people that's just moved to a new town. How are you going to do your due diligence? How are you going to, because you don't know anybody, who do you ask who is any good? And this is another problem that we've got in our industry. How do you find out if anybody's any good? People can buy reviews. I know there's lots of companies and they're buying reviews. And you can tell when you read them, you can tell it's a false one. You can tell that some's been AI generated and they're all, 99%, it's all good. Every one of ours, generally, I couldn't be asked to buy reviews and things like that. What's the point? Do you know what I mean? There's no point. But these companies that are doing it. But how do you find a decent surveyor? How do you find decent contractors? I think you've just got to. It's just I don't know. I don't know. I've no idea. Yeah, I don't know. Before I'd promote PCA and I'd say go on PCA website and do a postcode search. But now I'm a bit like, because all these surveys that I'm getting sent from surveyors, yeah, I'm just dismayed. You know what I mean? I'm dismayed. There's one or two that are good, and if people are in that area, I will recommend them. But on a whole, I don't know them all. So I don't know how people are gonna, find out who good surveyors and who bad surveyors are. It's a problem. It's a problem. But luckily, if you live in Barnsley, you can get in touch with us, and you'll get a good professional job done, guaranteed, and it'll last for as long as you want it to last for. So I'm gonna pop off and get some work done. This is what I'm doing now. I'm writing a survey up like that with my hands. Type it. Would have thought when I was at school that even though I did do typing for 2 years because it was compulsory. It was like that. You got told your thumbs off at the board. So did typing for 2 years as a class, and it came in handy. I would have thought that I'd have been just typing reports up and stuff like that in future. You'd even known. So that's Damp Sam signing off. Get in touch if you want us to sort your damp part professionally. Bye-bye now. Weird thing. Here we go.